This is a quick tutorial of how to connect to AWS and then create a MySQL database on the platform. What I want you to do is very first go ahead and connect to www.awseducate.com and then log in. Everyone has been sent the invite to the AWS classroom, but go ahead and do that and then log in. You'll see that there's this login to AWS Educate link below. Because you already have joined, hopefully, go ahead and click that and it'll take you to the next page. Okay, so once you have clicked that link, then it's going to ask you to go ahead and log in. I already have my credentials here, and I'll just log in. And then it'll take you straight to your classroom. You'll see your name. This may be a little bit different from yours because this is the educator or the instructor view, but you should see a button that says My Classrooms. That's down here. Go ahead and click My Classrooms. And it will definitely be different here. Instead of I'm an educator, you're going to see your classroom, the big data class down here as a student. From that, click for that class, go to Classroom, and then it's going to just take you to a third-party page. It's going to open up another browser. Click Continue, and you see that new browser, that new tab opens up. And then immediately you see that we're on a new page. I know it's slightly cut off here, but that's done on purpose. What we're going to do next is we're going to go into the class and then try to manage the class. So we want to actually view everything. So you'll see up here there's a little home button, but click the My Classes drop down, and then instead of the starter account, we're going to go straight to the application class. So click number 2, and it'll take you to that page. Let me actually just edit this a little bit. So you can see everything. Okay, so here we have a number of links. They're really good tutorials when it's actually going to explain a little bit more and how things work in this AWS Educate classroom. But first, we're going to just jump right into the console. So go ahead and click the AWS console. It'll open up another tab. I think by default this all services is collapsed, but what you want to do in order to see it, to see all the options, once you're at this AWS Management Console, click all services. If you don't see it, click it, and then we're going to scroll down to where it says database down here. Under database, you have a number of options, and let me just quickly say to get you familiar, there are a number of applications here that's included in AWS and the credits that you have. A couple that we will go over in this course is Lightsail, and then if you wanted to create a virtual machine on here, there are other packages like EC2, and there's S3 over here for storage. But there's a lot of different applications here that you can use for any kind of work that you want. So the one that we're actually focusing on in this tutorial is how to create a MySQL server, a database server. So we're going to click the RDS, the Relational Database Service, and we're going to click that link here under Database. And it's going to take us to a dashboard. This dashboard actually will show you a lot of things for instances that you're running for the RDS. Under RDS, you're going to see things such as DB instances. Maybe you had some snapshots of things you're going to save, but we're not going to worry about that. Right now, what we're going to do is create a database. So we're going to click this Create Database button. And then you're going to see options straight away. Because we're creating a MySQL database, I'm going to click this, select this here, and then scroll down. It'll give you options and some more details of each of these. Like you should be already familiar with the MySQL server that we've done with Azure. You may have experience with Postgre or a Maria database, but again, we're looking at MySQL. And there's a little checkbox down here where it says only enable options eligible for RDS free usage tier. In order to save our credentials, or sorry, our credits, we're going to click this. And it really just X's out this one, this Aurora. But because we're doing MySQL, and it should be everything that we need for this week is going to be in a free tier, make sure that's selected and then press next. So now we can actually start adding the details of our instance. The very first thing you're going to see is which version, which database version. Let me go ahead and drop down. You see there's a lot of versions out there. Let's just stick with the default of 5722. It's going to be under this general public license, and then scroll down. Because we're sticking to the free tier, we're going to keep this this checked. So if we had this, you'll see that there's a lot of options selected, but because we're only caring about free right now, I'm going to select this, and you see there's only one option here for the instance class. So we're going to have 1 CPU and 1 gig of RAM for this database. Okay, if you keep scrolling down, you're going to see that there's allocation storage options. We're only creating databases that have at most 20 gigs of data per week, so we're going to keep this at 20 gigs. The next thing is the settings. This is where you start to actually name the database. So this database instance identifier is what's the instance name for this database that we're going to create. I'm going to just call it big data. You should call it big data also. And then we can jump next into, I already have one called big data. I'll call it big data 1. You can call yours big data or big data 1, whatever. The master username, what I like to do is keep it the same, similar to this. It's not the most secure, but just in this, we're going to have the security in the password. For the master password, make sure that you have a simple password that you can remember. I would stick with all letters and keep them lowercase. Don't try to add any extra character or special characters and stuff, because that can actually mess up the database instance. So I'm going to just type in a password, and then I'm going to click next. So you may want to write these down. Like, for example, I forgot that I have a big data database instance already created. So you may want to just write down the identifier, the username, and the password. The password is probably going to be the most important, because this is not shown after this. But just remember these, and then press next. Okay, so now we're getting into the advanced settings. We're going to actually allocate some stuff. Most of this we're going to keep at default. We just want to double check that it's like public accessible, meaning that we can access this from home. We don't have to actually be inside an AWS instance to access this. So make sure that this is selected. The public accessibility is set to yes. Let's go ahead and scroll down. Now let's give our database an actual name. In this case, I'm going to call it big data. So this is the big data database, and the port is going to be the default of 3306. These parameters look good. Disable the IMDb authentication. We don't need this for now, so make sure that this is set to default. So my database name is going to be called big data. You can call it whatever you want. I'm keeping the port default, and everything else should be the default, including backup. We probably don't really care about backup for our projects, but you will if you want to do something that's more long-term. Keeping everything else the same. I don't really care about the maintenance stuff, and then the deletion protection, I'm just going to keep this by default set enabled. So once you have everything done and it looks good to you, go ahead and press create database. And it's going to take a few minutes for the database to actually spin up. Depending on which instance type it is, it actually may spool up a virtual machine. At the very least, it's going to spool up what we call a software container. It takes a couple of minutes because it's actually installing everything that's needed for the database, and then setting up the configurations. That means all the configurations that we've created so far. But that's it. That's how do you create a database. Once the database is created, then we can go ahead and connect to it using our client. The client that I recommend under Windows is HeidiSQL, and then there's a MacBook version that's very similar to that we covered in data warehousing. But while this is spooling up, let's go ahead and view our database instances. Click that. And so now from this, it's another dashboard, but we can see for Big Data 1, we can see that we have, we can see all the utilization, maybe even the memory, and storage space and things like that. It's nice to know what your database is doing at any given point. So this is actually a snapshot for that. But that's it. That's it in a nutshell of how do you create an instance. The next thing that you'll probably want to know is how do you actually connect to that. So we're going to hit up that next in the next video.